What we want to do now is kind of get into the meat and potatoes of all these changes. As I mentioned before, there's going to be a change in the FICO scoring model. A new form. This new model is really going to be available to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. These are the three consumer CRAs. And this is really going to be available to lenders. It's going to give them an extra tool so they can actually do the analytics, but do the analytics on you. And this is going to take place in the end of 2020. Now, it's already been said that Equifax is already on board, which means the other two companies will be coming in suit in the end of this year. A lot of people don't understand that Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion are private companies. They have nothing to do with the government, but they call themselves bureaus, but they're not part of the governmental body. Their job is to sell information about you. That's why they come up with the credit reports. So sometimes you could be applying for something and the underwriter or the lender may not be looking at your scores. They want to see your report. However, they subcontract FICO because FICO has a scoring model. That's how they can match your report with the score. So for the fact that FICO is actually changing their model and offering this to the CRAs gives an indication that they're going to be looking at some things a little bit more closely. Late payments on debt will be treated a little bit more severely. So how are you paying your bills? Are you paying all your current expenses on time? You got to understand that and I do know that everything that you pay may not be credit based. But when I get a little more on the training, we're going to be talking about tendencies or trending information. And so it's important that you pay everything on time. Now, this new model will now consider historical information about your credit card balances and payment amounts. So how are you paying your credit cards? When I get to the next slide, you'll see the emphasis on why that question is important. Now, for the people who have good credit already, through this new model, you may maintain your good credit or maybe be better. For people who don't have good credit, this is really the opportunity to, first of all, be aware that changes are coming, but then do something about it. Because if you have less than perfect credit, your scores may go down. So one of the good things is that the scores will remain between 300 and 850. So let's now talk about the FICO 10 suite. The FICO 10 suite includes two things, the FICO 10 score and then the FICO 10T score. This is actually the first redevelopment of FICO score since 2014. I remember back in 2012, 2013, they were talking about, the FICO 9 is coming. And when it comes, all these changes are going to take place. But I tell you what, most people didn't even know what FICO was. So they didn't realize there are actually different scoring segments of the FICO score. This kind of reminds me of my phone. I mean, when I got my S6 Edge a few years ago, I really thought I was doing it. But now the same phone I have is considered obsolete because now they got S11 or S12, whatever they have right now. The key thing is that something is always changing. And so that's why there's going to be several meaningful differences in the new scoring system. We want people to be better prepared. Now, this is the meat potatoes of credit. If you master these 5 key components, you can do very well. Because this is a lot different than business credit. Business credit only has one thing they consider, which is if you're paying your bills on time. That's it. But in the consumer space, we have 5 elements. The first one is payment history. Are you paying your bills on time? That is 35% of your score. When I talk to people, whether I'm counseling them or if I'm providing a service, that's the first question I ask. Because if they say they're paying the bills on time, we keep it moving. But if they tell me they're not, I need to understand why. And these troubling times, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be compromised on this area here. 30% is balance versus credit limit. We're talking about your utilization ratio on your credit cards. Now, on the previous slide, I talked about more emphasis. Well, here's the things they're looking at. So you see those 2 arrows? That's the emphasis. You're paying bills on time, and then your utilization ratio on your credit card. And so when we talk about utilization ratio, if you have a $1,000 limit and you owe $300 on the card, well, you have a 30% utilization ratio. What we try to do is encourage people to get down to 20% or even 10%. So the name of the game is, how many credit cards do you have? And then are they at least at 30% or better utilization ratio? If the answer is yes, then you're in good space. Because imagine that you have a 20% utilization ratio and you're paying your cards on time. There goes 60% of your score right there. However, if you're paying your bills on time, but you have high utilization ratios like 80%, 90%, or beyond, well, your scores are going to suffer a little bit because even though you're good in one, you're bad in the other. And then, of course, the other elements of length of credit history. Of course, the longer the better. That's always important. Credit inquiries, you want to always keep that down because if you have all these inquiries, what the new scoring model is thinking now is, oh, maybe you're in trouble. Maybe you always need credit because you don't know how to handle yourself. And then, of course, having a credit mix, which is 10% of your score. All these things combined is what really gives you a good credit score. In the new suite, these are going to be very important. But remember, the emphasis is on your payment history and balance versus credit limit. Let's go on to the next module.